Thank you for tuning in to the Practical Preservation Podcast. Please take a moment to visit our website, practicalpreservationservices.com, for additional information and tips to help you restore your historical home. If you've not done so, please subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud, and also like us on Facebook. Welcome to the Practical Preservation Podcast, hosted by Danielle and Jonathan Kepperling. Kepperling Preservation Services is a family-owned business based in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, dedicated to the preservation of our built architectural history for today's use as well as future generations. Our weekly podcast provides you with expert advice specific to the unique needs of renovating a historic home, educating by sharing our From the Trenches preservation knowledge and our guests' expertise, balancing modern needs while maintaining the historical significance, character, and beauty of your period home.
Today on the Practical Preservation Podcast, I have Mike O'Neill with me. Mike, thank you for joining me.
Thanks very much, Danielle. I'm delighted to be here with you.
Okay, so tell me about your background.
I'm Canadian. I have a business. We're living in New York now. We just got back after a 2-year sojourn in South Africa, and I got involved with the Gfeller collection way back in 2015.
Okay, very good. And what is the Gfeller collection?
So it's the Barry Gfeller. This is the life work of a man born in Camas, Washington in 1933, and he was a very smart person, a voracious reader, a collector of paper and signs and labels, but also a socially very shy person. And so he went to college for one term and dropped out because he just didn't like being around strangers. And he went to work in a paper mill. And about the age of 44, he picked up a camera. And from there, he began a voracious pursuit of, as he told his nephew, documenting history. And every May and every September, he would get in his car and he would drive these epic road trips, photographing buildings, particularly main streets, across the United States. And the ultimate expression of this was 50,000 images at the end of 20 years, comprising 3,750 or so cities, towns, and tiny hamlets, some of them photographed several times. And he shot them in 44 states and 6 Canadian provinces. I mean, it was just an enormous body of work. And as it turns out, a body of work that has no equal. There's no comparative collection.
Right.
He died in 1999 at the age of 66.
And what were the year? Oh, you said he started when he was 44. So did he do this photography throughout the rest of his life?
Yeah, it just became his passion. And so he would do 2 weeks in May and 2 weeks in September. And then he did develop, he became sick toward the end of his life. So he took a couple of years off around 94, 95. But in 1996, he went on probably his biggest road trip ever. And so he drove across the country, drove into Canada, drove down to the Gulf of Mexico. I mean, it just an enormous undertaking. And he shot on average 5 rolls of film a day because, of course, we're going back to the time when photography was analog. And he kept really detailed notes, and he would bring all of the film back, get them developed at the same photo lab in Camas, Washington, and then he would label each photograph. So it was a big undertaking, but one I think that just he found a lot of pleasure in.
That's a I'm just thinking, like, that's just such an interesting, like, for somebody who didn't want to be around people to like go out into the world, that must have been very brave. But then also the legacy that I wonder if he was, aware of what he was. I mean, I guess he was, since he said he was documenting history. he was aware of the legacy that he was leaving.
There's just as his bio, there's a very brief biography of him written by an historian of photography, Ken Apollo, and it came with the collection. And it said, there's so much we'll never know. I mean, there's only a couple of people alive who knew him, his niece and her son. And all of his notes and things. I mean, he'd amassed an enormous collection of paper at the end of his life. All of the notes and the notebooks and the receipts and things are gone. So there was, I did the work of recreating the trips, but there's nothing written. There's just one very small set of notes that somehow got worked, that were left in a box with the photographs. But his motivations and his thoughts about it, you really have to imagine it. And this is one of the interesting things about the collection. It's a bit like the Mona Lisa. Everyone projects onto it. Like everybody has their own take on it.
Right.
And so, everybody you talk to thinks, wow, what about, and, my wife pointed out, it's interesting that for somebody who was shy, that he's photographing main streets where people congregate.
Oh, yeah.
But the other really, really interesting thing about the collection is there are almost no people in the photographs. There are only a handful of the 50,000 photographs with people in them. So he shot very early in the morning, or he shot in the evening. And so the landscape is devoid of people. And so after you've looked at it for a while, if you pick up a handful of them and you're looking through, there's this eerie sense of where did everyone go? And it's almost like he's imagining the depopulation of downtowns, and he's almost imagining what we've experienced with COVID.
Right. Yeah, that's very interesting. Well, how did you get involved with preserving the Gfeller collection?
So so I have a business where I do broadcasting and political strategy and voter contact. And so in 2015, I was doing a third-party advocacy campaign in Canada during our federal election, or what you would call the national election.
Right.
And so at the end of it, one of the people who had been involved with the project said, I've got this great collection of photographs. She was on the board of a charity in Northern Ontario. I have this great collection of photographs, and it's our last significant piece of art. And we want to have it donated to the Library of Congress. And the Library of Congress had expressed interest in the collection. And so they needed to find a donor, and probably that donor had to be in the United States with, for all the reasons of having taxable income in the United States and having, of course, the interest. So they were hoping to raise money this way and continue their operations and their charitable operations. And this would be a big project. So I undertook it, and then down the rabbit hole I went.
Oh, and so were you trying to, what was your role in the preservation then?
So, it's an interesting thing, the preservation. So I'm arriving at it after the collection's taken quite a long route. So at the time of his death, the person who was his sister was his executor. And so I think his family members went in, and he was still living in the family home. He'd accumulated an enormous collection of books and magazines and papers and signage and stuff. A lot of that, some images from the collection were sold. Like his nephew, Kim Ketchmark, told me that he recalls seeing images of the Grand Canyon. So some of them might have been sold or given to people.
Okay.
The camera is no longer with us. Everything else, all the notes and things, were disposed of. So the collection then was sold. The mass of the collection was sold to an antiques and art dealer in I think in Portland, Oregon. Somebody heard about it and arranged that it would be bought by a Canadian art dealer, who then syndicated the donation to this charity in Northern Ontario. And they held it for 16 or 17 years until they contacted me about it. And so I'm just like one little link in the chain.
Yes.
And then my work began.
I was just going to say, it's amazing that it went through all those hands and still stayed, the 15,000 or 50,000 photographs stayed together, that they didn't get piecemealed out.
I think everyone who saw it, Danielle, said there's really something here.
Right.
And I met with the Library of Congress early in the project, and they said there is no other collection of photographs like this. So
No.
there are fire atlases at the beginning of the 20th century, but they don't have photographs, but they lay out what all the buildings
Right.
were. And then there's Google Street View and at the end of the century, and in between there's nothing. There's nothing in one place. And so this is the best collection of vernacular photography documenting American vernacular architecture.
Yes.
And so, if you look back, you recall, oh yeah, there were family shoe stores and there were record stores and all sorts of things. And, after our lifetime, 50 or 100 years from now, people wonder what exactly did it look like? And you'll have to rely on movies and things in the same way we imagine the Old West based on
Right.
Hollywood movies.
Yeah, it's and the downtowns, there's a movement going back towards downtowns, but they're not the same as they were, in the mid 20th century.
No, and I mean, the other question it asks is how much should be preserved in physically and how much should be preserved in memory.
Right.
So do you have to preserve? I mean, if you look at these buildings, they're all going through a kind of arc of they're built. A lot of them are just they're really not built for their aesthetic value. They serve a practical purpose.
Right.
There's lots of photographs. Some of the best photographs I think are of garages and other roadside stuff, and they're functional buildings. And then they if they're not maintained, they go through a period of decay or something, and then they're refurbished or not, or knocked down. I mean, some of this stuff is no longer there. I drove by, I happened to be in upstate New York near the Canadian border one day, and we drove by this hotel, and I think it had closed at this point, but it was a little bit decaying in the photographs from 20 years ago, and now you could see it had closed, like they just hadn't maintained it. It was a wooden structure. So should all of it be preserved, or should some of it be allowed to be replaced, but you want to know what it looked like?
Right. Yeah, and all buildings do go through that cycle of decay and renewal, and it's it's the ones that survive that give us that glimpse into our past.
And no one, as my wife points out, everyone wants the look they want the look of an older home. Like, some of them have, they're very appealing, and we're used to that aesthetic.
Right. Yeah.
But they don't want cold floors and they don't want drafty windows.
That is very true. Yeah. And when you were talking about the roadside things, I love the gas stations, or they might even just be service stations. They might not have been gas stations, the 2-story ones where the people lived above them. And they have like the big canopy that comes out. And I'm always telling my husband, we need to get one of those, or the roadside motels. I'm like, that could be our retirement plan. And he's like, no, we're not running a motel.
There's a show on television right now, the June Motel, and it's based on a pair of business partners, and they've refurbished a couple of roadside motels in Ontario, and they're doing really well with them. And they do a very good.
I'll have to watch that.
They do a very good job. And Gfeller was concerned. I mean, he was working in a mill, and the film, the cost of the gas and the film and the accommodation and things. I mean, it wasn't for somebody, for him without significant means. It wasn't a small undertaking, and so he was very careful about expenses. He probably stayed at less expensive motels and things. He was careful about all of it. I mean, just the gas for a road trip back then, and this is after the oil price shock. He starts in the mid 70s. Okay. So he invests a lot in the collection. Yes. That way, and is careful about it. And so I suspect, looking at a lot of the motels and things in the collection, he stayed there the night before, got up first thing, photographed it, and then started down the road.
Yeah. And you had mentioned 44 states and 6 Canadian provinces?
Yes.
Which states did he miss? Which 4 states of the lower 4, or the continental, did he miss?
He didn't go to Florida or Georgia, and I think perhaps the Carolinas.
Okay.
He did not go to British Columbia or the Maritime provinces in Canada, and of course not Alaska or Hawaii.
Right.
But and some places he went often. He often went to San Francisco.
Mhm.
He went to New York State a lot, which is significant considering it's on the other side of the
Right. Yeah.
country. So yeah, he did. I think he just did his best to do as much as he could. And you notice that the photographs they're all naive. He doesn't try to set them up. It's not Stephen Shore's work where the images are startling, or even John Margolis, who does vernacular American photography, but you can tell that he's put a lot of time into setting up the photograph. This is very raw, and a lot of times he would shoot from the car itself.
Yeah.
And it was almost like a race against time. Like, this is disappearing and I'm going to document it.
Yeah.
And so some of the images are mundane, and you notice they butt up against each other. Like the edge of one becomes the leading edge of the next.
Oh.
And so he's showing everything down one side of the street and then turning around and showing you everything on the other. So and yet within that, you still get some that are really artistic and really good. Like, he captures a very moody sky in Nevada in front of it, behind and around a gas station. There's great clouds. There are a lot of images in Texas that were startling. They were just really good. And people, when I published some of the images, people in Texas really took to the collection. There was a lot of interaction with it.
Yeah, that's really interesting that it wasn't just like certain buildings. It was like the entire main street. That's a really valuable resource, not just from like social kind of social study, like this is how downtowns used to be, but even from an architectural standpoint. I could see a lot of uses for that, much in the same way that the fire insurance maps are.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there's so many people that can make use of it in the future. I think it's a tremendous. And I mean, when we talk about the collection's next life, we'll talk about how I think this is going to grow.
Oh yes, well, that's actually where I was going to go. So I know that the collection has been donated. So tell me what's happening with the collection now.
Sure. So when I first got the collection, the charity gave me access to it, and I began the process of, I'd pick up handfuls of the images and I'd look at them, and you think about them, you talk about them. And then I got my friend Thomas McDonald to help me catalog them, because the old analog catalog was, and we did it on the basis of cities. So we did it on the basis of the way he labeled the collection, which was city or town, state, month, and year. And that's all the information you had. And occasionally he would write a note like, bank of something, but it was very sparse. So that because he was developing the photographs at the end, he was keeping a notebook of his travels. So
right.
You think of the amount of effort to do that, like 120 photographs a day with notes on each, really tough. And then to get them back and match that up, there was a lot of work already done by Gfeller. So then I ended up developing the website and then all the social media stuff with Owen Ward at Disruptive Media Group in Los Angeles. And I was able to recreate the routes he took I'd get on Google and sort of lay it all out. And I mean, it just followed a logical progression. You could see where he went from one town to the next, but it was still a big job to map out his routes. Yeah. And then of course we started publishing and talking about it in public. And then the Library of Congress was not an option at a certain point. So my wife and I purchased the collection. So I became the donor, and then started looking later with the thought of we would continue to discuss the collection and promote it and stuff. And then later, I found the National Building Museum, which I had not been aware of. And the National Building Museum embraced the collection and decided they would accept it as a donation from us. Oh. And we made the donation last year. And now they have, they've been fantastic they have scanned the entire collection, cataloged it, and at the beginning of the year, they're going to put the whole thing online. And so it will
Oh,
be
great.
available for people, who are researchers or who are doing academic work or who just want to look at the images. People
Right.
just want to see what their hometown looked like. So that's been terrific, and they've been wonderful to work with. So I'm very excited about that.
Oh, that is exciting. And the National Building Museum, where is that located?
That's in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
So I understand you're in Washington. So
I am
maybe
today.
give a drive by, and it's in an historic building. And I think one of the inauguration balls is held there every time there's a
Okay.
presidential election. It's a beautiful space, and they do exhibits of other things. They have about 300,000 objects in their collection, and it was really interesting. So I got a bit of a tour of the museum when I went there to deliver the collection. It's terrific. What I think I see in the future is, so you're starting with 50,000 images of 3,750 towns or whatever it is, but I think they could invite people then to contribute additional images. I mean, this
Yes.
may grow to be, it has the potential to grow to be an almost comprehensive collection of images of the United States at a particular period of time.
Right. Yeah. And it's almost like crowdsourcing it, and people could, yeah, I think that would be a great way to continue to build it and get different snapshots at different periods of time.
Yes,
Yeah.
you could work either across, or you could work backward and forward in time. I mean,
Mhm.
what does the United States, or did the United States look like?
Right.
And
Yeah.
and there is, after you've looked at this for a lot of you've put a lot of hours into looking at it, you realize there is an American vernacular architecture, and you would, without the labeling, you'd have a hard time knowing if something was in New York or Tennessee sometimes. Like
Right.
there really is, and sometimes you get some hints. Okay, that looks like a maritime building, or that looks like Maine, or so. But on the whole, there's definitely a style or an expression.
Yeah. And yeah, downtowns definitely look very similar. Like the storefront, that storefront look is, yeah, I could see that you wouldn't be able to necessarily tell a geographic area based off of that.
No,
Yeah.
no, exactly. So I had a little brush with Barry Gfeller, and I didn't
Yes.
realize this. I told you I was doing, I told you that I plotted the routes, and I realized that in May of 1992, he was traveling west along Highway 2 in Ontario, and he photographed Belleville and Trenton and Cobourg. Cobourg in particular has a very pretty old main street from the 19th century. But I was riding, my friend Steve Eisman and I were riding our bikes east along the same road at the same time. So at one point we must have passed each other.
Yes. Oh, that's kind of um uh that's kind of exciting that I mean, you didn't really get to meet him, because I'm sure that would have made him completely uncomfortable. But
Yeah.
uh, but that you were, that kind of took you full circle then to when you got to find, discover the collection, and then discover that's kind of exciting.
Yeah, it was interesting. So it was and it's hard to project yourself into another person's reality, but his family remembers him as being very happy, very intellectually curious. And I think for him to then go and work in this factory, so I also worked in a cardboard box factory. He was packing stuff into boxes, and I was making boxes. And you're at that point, you're trading your time and labor for money,
Right.
and it can be very repetitive, and it was hot and uncomfortable, as I'm sure it was where he was, and you find a way to escape it. I think this allowed him a way of escaping it.
Right.
Planning the next trip, thinking about the collections. Like, it was something on a higher order, and something that I think made, in his obituary in his hometown, they said he liked to take photographs of old buildings. And I don't think that nearly comes close enough to saying what he achieved with this.
I agree. I think that's those repetitive tasks, you do need something to keep your mind occupied.
Yeah. So he was, I sympathize. Or as my brother once said, when, in college, you order pizza and everybody's all over it. And he said, all I could smell was the box. It was the best, it was absolutely true. So, the other exciting thing for me, so as part of the donation, you get a professional appraisal done, and we worked with Edward Yee at Penelope Dixon, and so they have to go out and research and find comparators. And this is, somewhere between a work of documentation, vernacular photography, and then some of it, you could argue is art, because some of it did turn out very well.
Right.
And so, in reading the appraisal, it was exciting to think that Gfeller's work now has to be counted in the canon of American vernacular photography. So if somebody is going to talk about people who have also photographed the American landscape, they probably have to consider Gfeller now if they're doing any kind of academic research, or they're looking,
Right.
because just because of the scope of his effort.
Yeah, I agree. And so that his kind of outlet becomes, what he's known for, rather than working at the paper mill.
Yeah, absolutely. It was, all of us have to, I think all of us at some point think about our legacy, or maybe
Right.
maybe that's a male thing. I don't know, but it's a question of what are we leaving behind. And I think if you leave behind a series of good interactions with people, that's a good legacy.
Right.
But here he's left something that is of a scope, and being a quiet person, and not drawing attention to himself. Would anybody have thought, oh, he's going to be remembered as the greatest artist in our community, or the greatest historian in our community? Like he's achieved that now in
Right.
posterity.
Yeah. And that might not have been his overall goal. It might have just been a documentation and outlook, or an outlet, but it definitely it definitely has transcended, where he left it.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
if his
And I
family
believe it
hadn't
will.
thought to keep it all together, no one would have known.
No, they were. I think they recognized the amount of work and the value of the body of work. And now I think, and everybody along the chain, everyone who's seen it just thinks there's something remarkable about it.
Yes.
And now that it's at the National Building Museum, I think it's going to take on a second life and become something else entirely.
That's very, very exciting. Is there anything that I didn't think to ask you that maybe you wanted to share, that you thought of while we were talking?
I don't think
Okay.
so. I think I'm good with that. So yeah.
Okay, well, very good. Well,
good.
thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed learning more about the collection, and I did spend some time on the website. Oh, tell us where we can at least see a preview of the collection, because I know not all the images are on there.
So you can see a sample of the images, and there are a lot of the states are covered with a small number of images at Gfeller Collection. That's GFELLER collection.org. And there, the route maps are there, and there's a brief biography of him. And there's also a couple of photographs of Barry Gfeller that were provided by his family, which I'm grateful for. And yeah, and then that site will wind down as soon as the National Building Museum goes online at the beginning of the year. And I'm looking forward to that, because of course I haven't seen all the images.
Right. Yes. This would be exciting. I'm excited to tell people that are doing research that this is another tool. And I'm excited for this too. So thank you very much for sharing your information and your time with me today.
Thank you very much, Danielle. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Yes. Have a good rest of your day. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Practical Preservation Podcast. The resources discussed during this episode are on our website at practicalpreservationservices.com/podcast. If you received value from this episode and know someone else that will get value from it as well, please share it with them. Join us next week for another episode of the Practical Preservation Podcast. For more information on restoring your historic home, visit practicalpreservationservices.com.